A guy called Yoda.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you need. I don't think it's. Is it on?
That one, I don't even know.
Yes, it's on now.
There we go.
Turn it on, yes. You probably don't need it though, but so. Yes, well, thank you for coming along here today. Good to see you all. And my first time here in Kansas City, so you've made me very, very welcome. So thank you.
Have you had any good barbecue since you've been in town?
I had a lovely meal last night. Yes.
Good.
So yes, went to had a great steak. So I'm
Good.
really enjoying it. So I think there's a nice meal tonight as well arranged. So
Yes.
yeah, so looking forward to that.
Well, does anyone want to start off with the first question for us tonight? There we go.
So in the show Little Shop of Horrors, so what exactly made you want to make the puppet a plant? Because as the title doesn't say anything about, it's just a little shop of horrors. It could have been a magic shop, it could have been, I'm just asking, I just wanted to know.
Right. Okay. Well, it wasn't my choice to make it a plant, but my choice was to work for director Frank Oz. And Little Shop of Horrors originally was a Jack Nicholson film that was shot over a weekend on other people's sets for very little money. And it became a Broadway stage production. And it's out of the Broadway stage production that they decided to make a film adaptation. And the Little Shop of Horrors, the horrors it's a flower shop, it's a plant shop. And the horror is the plants. But on that particular film, the real challenge was to bring the character to life that had no eyes. Because most of the animatronics up to then, the soul's in the eyes, you're always told. In animation, when you look at an actor, so Michael Caine says, never blink on a close-up because it disconnects you from the audience. So it's all about the eyes. There were no eyes on Audrey 2. So it had to be, the puppet had to be designed so that physical body language could express a lot of emotion, and a lot of that was in the lips. So it was probably the most sophisticated puppet of its day, and it took 6 months with us rehearsing to get to a level where we could deliver the performances. It was that difficult. And does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So is that the most difficult one that you had?
It's one of the most difficult. The last version of Audrey 2 was, we called the Mean Green Mother plant because it was the biggest one. And that took 65 puppeteers on the biggest day. Because there's the main plant, there's all the lips, there's all the vines. And the vines often would take 2 puppeteers to operate a single vine. And then there's the singing pods, and that all took lots of puppeteers. So it was an amazing amount of coordination and trying to make sure that the performances were correct. Because Frank Oz, the puppeteer, was directing this, and he wanted everything perfect. So I think the most takes we did was 85 takes on one, but typically we'd be doing like 20, 30 takes to get the lip sync just right. Because there was like 16 people working together, and Frank wouldn't accept it until it was perfect. So, so no, that was pretty tough for everybody to get right. So, yeah. Yes.
What was your favorite puppet to puppeteer?
Favorite puppet? Well, it's tough. I mean, because I started with Yoda on Empire Strikes Back. I was 19. And I had taken over from Frank Oz. So that as a starting point in my film career, it's got to be on the top list of that. I loved performing Jabba the Hutt because he was my first chief puppeteer role, where I was in charge of the team of puppeteers, and it was my voice that everyone was trying to sync to when we were performing as a team of puppeteers. So that was amazing. And they were both Star Wars, so that was great. I also loved performing Sprocket the dog on Fraggle Rock. And quite the opposite side. And I got to perform in 3 different styles because Jim had this genius idea of making international versions of Fraggle Rock appear that they were made in that country. So the Dock and Sprocket segments were refilmed in France, in Germany, in England, and in Norway. So the viewers of that country thought it was a show made by them in their country. So I got to perform Sprocket in England, and he was really quite like a real dog. He was very much more subdued. In Germany, they wanted an absolute copy of the original Canadian version. So I literally copied the original, which was Steve Whitmire. Shot for shot, they actually did it shot for shot on exactly the same set dimensions, but we were just dressed to be Bavarian. So that was a really good teaching lesson to copy Steve Whitmire's performance exactly. And then the English version was very realistic dog. And then I did it in France, and it was way cartoony. It was like huge. So I had this amazing experience of having the same puppet perform in 3 different styles, which was again just an amazing learning experience and developing a character in 3 different ways for 3 different audiences. So that was a magical time, and it's all in that same period. But since then I've enjoyed Mr. Tinkles from the Cats and Dogs movies. He was so much fun to perform. And just recently being Wile E. Coyote for Coyote versus Acme. Yes?
You said Yoda was towards the beginning of your career. Was that your very first one?
It was Yoda was my very first movie job. So being a second generation puppeteer, I'd spent all my childhood puppeteering with my folks. I had my own puppet show.
I was going to ask, how did you get into it?
Yes. So I'm answering that question as well. I must know that you're going to answer. So I was, and I loved it. I loved puppetry. I wasn't one of the kids that didn't like what their parents did. I absolutely loved it, and got really into it. Made my own puppets, did my own puppet shows. Had my own Punch and Judy show, which was a gift from my parents for my 8th birthday. So I had the full puppet theatre and a set of puppets for an 8-year-old kid. So, and loved it, and did loads of shows for school friends and at school. And so made a few pounds back in England doing that. But I also got interested into the Planet of the Apes, and wanted to do cosplay before it was even called cosplay. So I did a live cast of my face, sculpted the ape masks on there, did the plaster mold, did it in latex, and then glued it to my face, made the wigs and the costumes and everything. So, and then we used a standard 8 cine camera to film our little home movies with the apes. So I definitely wanted to get into films and into TV. Although I was still doing the live puppeteering with my parents, it was the film and TV that interested me. And I got a lucky break to meet Stuart Freeborn, who is the makeup supervisor on the Star Wars films. A week later, he offered me a job on being on the Yoda team. So I was just so lucky. And I did see Star Wars when it was released in 1977, which was December in the UK, and I was there on the first opening weekend. My friend's father had got us tickets. I don't know how he did that. But we at the end of the film, we both said we have to be in the film industry. That it changed our entire mindset of what we were going to do for our career. And I said something like, "Oh, I wish I could work on something like that." And oddly enough, 2 years later, I had. My friend, it took him another 5 years later still. He actually came in as a runner on Labyrinth. So he said, "Oh yeah, this guy coming in." I said, "Oh, I know him. You can count on him." I said, "I don't know if my recommendation held any water or anything, but he got on the film, and then he ended up in the film industry ever since and directing things. So we both found our passions, and our wishes came true."
How challenging was all the puppetry involved in Labyrinth?
Right, well, Labyrinth was interesting, because there was, Jim was he was always pushing the envelope on everything that could be done with puppeteering, and we were moving more towards servo-controlled motors in the head rather than cables. That was a benefit for not having to have lots of people around you, but of course it weighed more. So then every puppet was heavier. But also we were in a point where this was well before any computer animation. So for something like Didymus, we needed multiple versions of Sir Didymus. So Jim liked the way I approached marionettes because I did that a lot as a kid. So he asked me to build a special hybrid servo controlled marionette of Didymus. So he could move like a hand puppet but be on strings. So that was, again, pushing into carbon fiber technologies and new servo motors and just working out how to do this puppet. And I devised a special little crank at the back of the control where all the strings would come up and wrap around the control. I don't think anyone had done before, so I could change the length of the strings between shots, because every shot was a different length. And it's like, normally, when I worked on Team America, you would just cut the strings and tie them all new strings, but that would take ages. And so so many years before then, like 25 years before, I'd already worked out how to do it with a wind-up control, so it would be practical. So always trying to think ahead of what's going to be needed on camera. And so we had the huge character Ludo. Tim Wheeler was the main puppet builder for that, and they were using Kevlar and carbon fiber cloths to put into special fiberglass molds to make the actual shape of Ludo. And then he had a special hand knitted, it was like a knitting machine, but that was for all his fur, specially handmade. And it took months and months and months of feeding in all this hair and then even knotting in other hairs afterwards. So just getting it, and this was a 4-way stretch like a fur that they would put on the surface of him so it would all move properly. So really developing technology far beyond what you would imagine would be used on the screen to bring these characters to life. So yeah, there was a lot of hidden work that you wouldn't really appreciate was there. So.
Because for Didymus, you had to have like the real dog that
Yeah.
he was on, and then you had like a puppet dog.
Yes, well, yeah, because Didymus was riding a dog, so they English sheepdog, and there's a hand puppet version as well, so that the dog could actually react in a specific way. I think there were 2 versions of that puppet. Then there was the hand puppet version of Didymus, and every puppet has different limbs, so that you can put in different hands, different rigs, different kinds of arms, different bodies, so that you can either work through the stomach, work through the back, or work through from underneath. So depending on what the shot was.
Okay.
And then we had also what would just be called a stuffy, which was like for stunts. We also had a sprung-loaded version that would sit onto the saddle for the real dog, so that it would actually move with the movement of the real dog. And then we had the full marionette, which was operated from above. So combining all of those, we were able to give a sense of one complete character. Because if it was just a Muppet, you could only really see it like a hand puppet. You could only see it from the waist upwards. And so this way you got to see all versions of it and trick the eye and the audience to think it's just one puppet.
So, you said Yoda was your top first favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Who was your least favorite to play?
Oh, least favourite. Now, I've never been asked that before. The least favourite to play. Well, I guess it has to be Blorp from Lost in Space. Because we knew it was never going to make the film. The Jim Henson Creature Shop had made this little alien that changed colour that was part of I think we filmed it in '97. So it was the Gary Oldman, Matt LeBlanc reboot of Lost in Space, and there was a little alien called Blorp. And I think most of us thought, we don't really like the look of this thing anyway. And the puppet was really hard to operate, and they wanted incredibly long rods for the rod puppeteering of the arms and the legs. In my opinion, far longer than they needed to be. But it was just like, why are we doing this? You know, it's like this. We're spending all this effort, and the puppeteers everyone is doing their best, and I was just like, no, this is going to be completely replaced with CG, and it was. But the interesting thing was, it was replaced by the Jim Henson Creature Shop, the same guys that had made the actual puppet, and a year or so before, I'd been headhunted by Pixar, by Ed Catmull, to go and join them to be an animator. And I was very interested, and I had a little bit of experience with CGI animation. But at the time, it didn't seem the right time to move with my family. My 2 boys were in school, and I still think I wanted to do a bit more with animatronics. But suddenly now there's this opportunity at the Creature Shop, Blorp's coming in as an animation character. So I actually ended up animating some of Blorp on Lost in Space. And actually I felt I enjoyed that more than the puppet. It still didn't look very good. They didn't change the design enough. So, but no, it was an interesting situation where I thought, oh well, that's it. Well, we'll never see any of the puppet work. And in the end, I actually contributed to the CG. So. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the Hoggle puppet from Labyrinth and what happened to him after production.
Oh, Hoggle, yes. Well, Hoggle was sculpted by Val Charlton, and she worked on things like Time Bandits. She worked on the Landstriders on Dark Crystal. Wonderful sculptor, and she also worked later on Baron Munchausen. But for Hoggle, she sculpted the Hoggle face. Engineer Tony Dunsterville created the mechanisms for it, and that was quite a challenge because it was very close to Shari Weiser's face, and the eyes were very close. So typically you would have linkages to drive the eyes. So he had to come up with a closed loop internal system with cables to actually even be able to make the eyes move in the position they were in the head. So it was a really tricky, again, a difficult mechanical problem, but I think he worked pretty well. So Shari Weiser was inside Hoggle, a small person, and they tried initially giving her a video monitor, but it was very difficult to see what was going on. It was a very poor picture, very grainy, it was very confusing. So in the end, she didn't do that. So she just looked out through the mouth. So it's often like, Hoggle's making noises to allow the mouth to be open so that she could see where she was going. So that's, again, you'll find that a lot on the animatronic creatures. You'll find if the performers are looking through the mouth, they will make noises so that the mouth can open. And so it had Brian Henson doing the voice, Jim Henson's son, and controlling the radio control jaw, and I think they had Dave Greenaway doing the eyes. I can't remember who's doing the eyebrows. Maybe Donald Austin. Anyway, no, Rob Tigner, I think. Rob Tigner did. Anyway, so a team of puppeteers, whole team doing the face. They all had to work together, and then Shari inside. So it really was a very difficult thing to do. I don't think anything had been attempted quite that sophisticated with, again, all using full radio control. And back then, the radio control, these days, you move the control and the servos move in perfect timing. But back then, you move the control and the servo would move after. There was quite a bit of latency. So that took a whole new way of approaching. You almost had to perform before you needed to, so that it was working at the right time. So that was a whole different mindset to try and bring the performances. Yeah, Sir Didymus's eyebrows were really slow, so I actually had to make the move before they were needed. You know, so because I did some work on Didymus eyebrows, and so it's like, God, it was tough. It was tough. So, and then, yeah, I think at the end of production, I think it got lost. Certain things got lost. And I don't quite know where it went, but I think at some point it resurfaced and everyone thought, no, that won't be the real Hoggle head. No, there's no way it's going to be. But it was. And I think it got, if my memory serves me right, without checking online, I think it got lost in some shipping. It was in sort of like was going from A to B somewhere, and it got lost and nobody came to pick it up. Everyone forgot about it. It's a little bit like after Dark Crystal was completed and Jim Henson started on Labyrinth. There was a period when it's like, right, oh well, we're done. Jim decided he wasn't going to do any more Dark Crystal. That was it. It was only the one Dark Crystal. So he thought, oh well, he decided he didn't have the room to store the molds because there were so many molds for Dark Crystal. Destroy them all. So all the original Dark Crystal molds were sledgehammered and cut to pieces, and He didn't want anyone stealing them because he didn't want people sort of casting things out of them. So they were all destroyed. Back in the day when people collecting these sort of things was never considered. So, so yeah, sadly that all disappeared. It doesn't exist anywhere. All of that stuff. So, but in the same idea, so much is thrown away into skips at the end of a movie. I mean, they just throw things into dumpsters when everything's done. Just amazing work and art and puppets, and just they don't want them to cost too much to store. Throw them away.
And now the prop store of London sells them for big bucks.
Oh yes, Brandon Allinger, and yeah, the prop store. They decided that it was their passion. They liked collecting screen-used props, and they've turned it into a very good business, I think. So, yes.
So do you know whenever they made the Dark Crystal show, like did they work with some of the same artists to do that, or were you involved with that at all?
No, I wasn't involved in Dark Crystal. I was on another project. Initially, it was being built in Burbank, in California, and then the puppets went out for rehearsals and rebuild in London. So there's like 2 sections of build for Dark Crystal TV shows, as far as I know. They used one of the interesting creative inputs was Brian and Wendy Froud's son, Toby, who was Toby in Labyrinth, became the puppet supervisor for the Gelflings, and obviously coordinated with his mum and dad about getting these puppets built. And I think Wendy came in and did some work. She didn't want to really focus on the Gelflings because she'd already done that sort of 40 years before, but she did some of the just like fun, quick-made puppets that would just be one-offs, and absolutely adored doing that. And of course, Brian did a lot of new designs for it. So the original creative vision from Brian Froud was embraced, and Brian was on that film, on the TV series. So, and that was great. It was really nice to see that. But typically, the puppeteers, not. I think Louise Gold, she played the gourmet Skeksis, and she was back again working on that. But pretty much everyone else, they were all new puppeteers. A lot of my friends, because it was all filmed in England. I now live in Burbank, so I wasn't there. So, but they had fun to relive the Dark Crystal after hearing stories from me when I worked on it when I was 20. Yes.
Did you ever keep any of the puppets afterwards?
The main one that I kept that the screen used was the Some Fun Now Audrey 2 puppet, because I built and performed that for Frank Oz, the director, and for Lyle Conway, animatronic supervisor, because most of Audrey 2, well, all the other versions of Audrey 2 were mechanical. They had cables to control all the functions of the puppet. But for the actual being able to pull on Rick Moranis' finger and make it look realistic, they decided they needed a hand puppet. And they didn't have really a puppet maker on the crew, or certainly didn't have one that was available. So Lyle asked me, and I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I got in at 5 a.m. in the mornings and worked through till we started rehearsing at 9. And in those hours, I assembled this hand puppet. Eventually got to puppeteer it on the movie. And at the end, as a gift and as a thank you, Frank Oz and Lyle Conway gave me that puppet to keep. So that was one that I was given. While we were working on Roger Rabbit, we got a few of the props. I got the Ink and Paint Club menus, that sort of thing. So over the course of the years, I've had sort of props and bits and pieces from them. But as far as a screen-used puppet, Audrey 2 is my favourite. So. Any other questions, or I guess I could, yes.
Not a question, a comment. I was doing some online research about Hoggle, and
Yes.
as of December of 2021, they were saying that the Alabama Unclaimed Baggage Center actually owns them and has them on display.
Alabama, wow, that's brilliant. I love that. That's just excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Internet knows everything.
Yes, that's true, yes. Oh, well, that's fantastic. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, they found his head and no
Yeah,
one ever claimed it.
no one ever claimed it. It's
Yeah,
like
they said
crazy.
It's not owned by Hanson's estate or anything.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's nuts. You'd think it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, there you go. Oh, it must have gone off for some kind of exhibition or display or something, and everybody forgot about it.
Yeah.
I know we talked about earlier new projects. Could you tell me a little bit about what you've done in the Coyote versus Acme?
Yes, yeah. Well, yes, been doing this 44 years in films,
Mhm.
and my most recent film is Coyote versus Acme.
Mhm.
It's a Warner Brothers movie, and the premise is Wile E. Coyote is suing the Acme Corporation for all the failed products that he's bought over the years, and so, but he's doing it so that he can try and get hold of the Roadrunner, because he still hasn't got the Roadrunner. So it stars Will Forte, who's absolutely brilliant. He's hilarious. He's really good, and yeah. So we filmed that in Albuquerque, which was on locations a lot, which was really great because it really felt like the environment that Coyote would be in. And in early discussions, the production was saying, well, Coyote doesn't speak. And this is a live action film that has live actors with an animated coyote. Well, what are we going to do about Coyote? And but my producer friend Christopheria said, I have the solution. It's called Dave Barclay. You know? So he called me up, and I sort of gave him my pitch as how I felt Coyote could be represented for the live action part with a puppet, so the full-size puppet. So Chris seemed to think that was a great idea, so I'd made a prototype, and everyone loved the prototype. So when they got the green light, I built various different versions of him, of Coyote, so that he could have different arms and different legs and different bodies, different heads. But the main puppeteering head had mechanisms to make his cheeks smile and frown, and his eyes frown and go sad. So the combination of those two, which were direct linkage mechanisms that I could control with my right hand, I could give him different emotional beats and acting, because we needed Coyote to act silently in front of all the actors. So that's what I did. I was on my knees every day holding up this Coyote puppet dressed in black, and representing Coyote performing on sets every day. So it was absolute joy. It was really great, and everybody was so supportive and really enjoyed Coyote being there. It was fantastic. It was a great experience. And my friend Keith, who's the animation director, is doing has just completed an amazing job on the animation. I think it's really some of the best, because it is actually computer animation, CG animation, but it looks just like the original cartoon animation. So it holds up beautifully on the big screen, and it's just amazing. So I think it's going to be a great movie. We're waiting to hear about an actual final release date, because I think Warner Brothers has just gone through some executive changes. So the pathways of some people have gone, and so they're trying to work out when they can get the release date. So, but yeah, keep an eye out for Coyote versus Acme, I said, because I think it's going to be brilliant. So it's getting high 90s in the test screenings, so it should be good. It should be fun. And it's nice because it's like I'm still puppeteering. I mean, Yoda, I was the kid, and I'm the granddad on Coyote. Still doing the same stuff, and just still loving it though. I mean, that's the thing. I just so enjoyed being on the film set again. It was really good because we had the break from COVID. Everyone had the break from COVID, and so
Not too hot in Albuquerque?
it was fine. I think we got the right timing, yeah, because we started sort of, I think, mid-March, so we didn't get too hot. We were out in the desert for a while, and that was pretty blistering. So yes, I wore sort of like more sand-coloured clothes rather than black, because I think I might have passed out from heat exhaustion. So, but no, it's so lovely, and yeah, the actors were so supportive of the puppeteer being there. So that's not always the case. Some actors don't necessarily get on with the puppets.
Really?
I did Baron Munchausen, and which was an amazing film, and a very sort of quirky film. But the John Neville, the lead actor for Baron Munchausen, I had to take his soul out of his mouth, so that death had come along. I was playing a skeletal figure of death with these mechanical skeletal hands, and I had to reach in and take out, and it was a little light rig that my friend Dave McCall had made, and it was basically attached to the shutter speed of the camera. So it was flashing away while we were, just a bit like a flash from a camera. It was flashing away while we were doing it, but it looks like a pure solid light on film. Really clever. So but I pick this unit out and take it away, and Terry Gilliam was the director. He said, "Oh, that's great, that's fantastic, great." And John Knoll says, "Oh, first it was children, and then animals, and now I'm upstaged by a bloody puppet." And I took that as a great compliment, you know. So yeah, so he was having, he had such a hard time on the movie because it's so exhausting for him, and it's such a crazy movie. But yeah, so every once in a while the actors weren't quite so supportive. Bob Hoskins on the other side from Roger Rabbit was the most supportive actor you could imagine. He was just so amazing, and that was another wonderful film where, because it's interesting, there's two different ways of remembering the film. It's how the days that you make it, and then seeing the final movie when it's complete. Sometimes you can work on a film that you think is really lovely, and you look at it going, "Oh, this wasn't very good." Or the opposite, you work on a film that's quite miserable, and it's a great film. I think nearly all my films were great to work on, and they look great when I saw them. So Roger Rabbit was one of those where it was fantastic to work on, and when we saw it, it was just as fantastic as the experience of working on it. So yeah, it's a lovely experience being able to sort of bring these characters to life, and then go and see how they look for everybody else. But of course, I'm never going to see it like you guys do. I'm going to be checking. Oh yeah, no, that eye blink was in the wrong place. You know? They should have chosen the take before, because the take before the eye blink was perfect. So yeah, puppeteers are very much control freaks, where you want to get everything right, and that's why I think Frank's directing on Little Shop of Horrors was perfect, because he made sure it was, and that film is I think it's excellent. So very proud of that. I'm proud of I think all the films that I've worked on. So.
Most of them are lovely.
Yeah, and and some of them are like working with Muppets. It's like working with old friends, and you just get back together again. Sometimes, haven't seen you for 10 years, and then you get back. We did the Jason Segel film a few years ago in Hollywood, and it was lovely. I just got to catch up with all my old puppeteer friends, and just have a blast. Just enjoy it. So, and sometimes that's nice when you're just in. Because I typically just go in and assist and double for the Muppet characters. I'm not a lead Muppet. So that's nice, there's no responsibility. Rather than when I'm animatronic effects supervisor, I've got to make sure the puppets look right and the performances look right. A lot more responsibility. So again, each job has its own benefits, and I love them all. So.
Do you still keep in touch with them, like Brian Henson and Frank Oz?
I haven't seen them for a while, actually. No, that's not for a while. I have seen some of the other Muppet performers more recently, but not Brian or Frank. So I almost bumped into Frank a little while, just a few months ago, but we just wrong timing. So because I think Frank's in New York, so and I'm in LA, so we won't unless we set up a meeting. So, which I guess I should do. I should catch up. It was because of Frank and giving me the chance to take over Yoda for those 2 weeks that launched my career. So I've got him to thank for everything.
Ignore me if this is a repeat question, so I can't be minutes late. It's like, what was your pathway to get this? Were you an actor, artist, engineer? Like, and then it just like the opportunity was presented. Like, what were the steps that you took?
Right, yes, I did say a little bit of that, but I can be a bit more specific. Being second generation puppeteer, I wanted to not do my parents' traditional theatrical work. I wanted to get into TV and movies. And so I started building my own prosthetic makeups and that sort of thing. I did some home movies. I think I did a parody of the $1 Million Man versus the Dalek with the golden gun. And the $1 Million Man had really bad bionics and a terrible rubber hand and a dodgy eye. And so I did that as a cine film. And then I made a full-size Dalek. My friend James and I decided to make a full-size Dalek when I was 14. And so built the Dalek in my back garden, and so we filmed it. So yeah, sort of really was interested in filmmaking and doing that sort of thing. But the direct line, the specific line into Star Wars was I worked at Hamleigh's Toy Store in London doing a summer job, selling toy puppets, the puppets I used to puppeteer when I was a kid. And Mark Hamill came in, and Mark said he wanted to buy a whole bunch of puppets and have a custom Darth Vader string puppet made. So he commissioned me to make an 18-inch carved Darth Vader, which, when it was finished, he invited me along to the studios to present it to him. He said, "Oh, I'm sure you'd like to meet Stuart Freeborn." I said, "Love to," because Stuart was the makeup artist, and I knew all about Stuart. He was one of my heroes. Went up to meet him. I had brought my portfolio. I was very sensible. Showed him my portfolio of all the work that I'd done, and a week later, Stuart offered me a job working for him on what became Yoda.
Wow.
And because I had done the makeups, I'd done the sculpting, I did an old age makeup of myself, and I did a copy of famous Dick Smith's 121-year-old makeup on Dustin Hoffman from Little Big Man. And so I had all this work. And I had the puppets and some stop motion figures and some models, and just character sketches and everything. There was just enough for him to say, "Oh yeah, you can wash out the foams and you can trim off the edges and everything. I'll have you in and work." So yeah, so I had just enough skills already at age 19 to be a viable trainee. And that's it. That just took off then. Snowballed from that point, and the snowball's slowing down a little bit now, but it's still rolling.
Well, I hate to cut you short, but they're telling me your photo op is about ready to start here.
Oh my God! Oh well, I haven't even brought
Didn't want to, you know.
I forgot about Yoda. Let's get Yoda out.
But hey, everybody, put your hands together for David Barclay. And then hang on up next door, there's a photo tape with his friend Yoda.
I'm getting ready here so you can see him. Wow, that went quick. Come on then, Yoda. Yes. So this is the exact size and detail of the original Yoda head, and he's operated in a similar way. But so my thumb's operating his jaw, and my index finger, which is way up here, is operating mechanism for his top lip. Middle finger's doing his eyelids, so he can concentrate, and then third finger's doing the eye movements, and then fourth finger's doing the ears. So it's all built in here, really just to show you the sort of thing, the sort of range of movement that Yoda can do without having to have 4 people with me. So yes. So this is my Yoda, and I created him to basically celebrate the amazing work of Stuart Freeborn, who sculpted and created this masterpiece of a puppet that still is probably, I think, the most famous puppet, second to Kermit the Frog, I would say.
Yep.
But yes, I think so much of it comes down to this beautiful sculpture that he did. So yeah, So yeah, just wanted to bring him in and let him meet everyone. So.
Well, like I said, you can get your photo with him right next door. So just head on over there, y'all.
Ready?